Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world with me, George Galloway.
And me, Gayatri.
Well, they know a thing or two about democracy in Greece, and on Sunday they chose the most radical left-wing government elected in Europe since the 1930s.
And it is the 1930s in Greece, with 50% youth unemployment, mass poverty, a suicide epidemic, fascists on the march, and the state being dismantled on the demand of other states.
The left-wing Syriza party, together with other radical forces, including a party called the River and the Greek communists, who won 32 seats between them, now has a clear mandate and majority for an end to what they call austerity, a 1930s word for making the working people pay for the failures of a system over which they had no control and for which they now refuse to take responsibility.
The other states found it hard to muster much in a way of enthusiasm for the Greek people's verdict. In fact, Herr Juncker, the head of the EU, sent a tweet congratulating the Syriza leader on his election as president, while he's in fact the new prime minister.
Joining us now to survey the scene from the Sputnik is Dr. Vasilis Monasteriotis from the prestigious London School of Economics. Professor, the verdict came as not much of a surprise, though there were some surprising elements. PASOK being reduced to 5%, having once towered over Greek politics for decades. The Golden Dawn, the fascist formation, overtly, explicitly fascist, swastikas and all, becoming the third party in Greece. But Syriza's winning the majority, though just one seat short of a parliamentary majority, wasn't a surprise. Take us through, if you would, your reading of the election result as a whole.
I think there's two elements in the Syriza victory. One is, of course, the appeal of the anti-austerity rhetoric and ideas that have, of course, a huge appeal in Greece. People have been suffering for many years, and they do not see either an end to this austerity program, but also they do not see the fruits of austerity. They do not see there is a stabilization, if you want, of the economy. It is not declining anymore as it has been in previous years, but they do not see the job creation. They do not see the increases in incomes that one would associate, of course, with the end of austerity. So there's very much public support for a change in policy in the direction of ending austerity, and Syriza was the most credible of the parties promising that. I think also there's another element of the dissatisfaction of big parts of the public and of the traditional electorate of the traditional parties of the center left and center right, a dissatisfaction with the way they implemented the policies, the way they communicated the policies, and the way they also engaged in negotiations with the European Union, the Eurozone partners. The policies in Greece have not been near as effective, the austerity policies, near as effective as in other places in southern Europe. They have been painful across the south of the Eurozone, but they have been particularly painful in Greece, partly because of the way they were half implemented and not directed towards essentially supporting growth.
How serious is Syriza, which is a very new party? It has a lot of leftist rhetoric. How serious are they about challenging the orthodoxy of the EU on this matter?
I think overall Syriza is absolutely serious and committed to challenging some of the main premises of the EU and especially of the Eurozone, of the EMU architecture, how it is built on the idea of fiscal discipline, on the idea of balanced budgets and, of course, price stability over full employment as a priority. So they're both committed to challenging that, and they also have an alternative proposal, an alternative vision for a Europe which is more Europe for the people rather than Europe for the markets, so to speak. They are a new power in Greek politics, but they're not really a new party. So the party has a long history. Obviously, they come out of the Communist Party historically, but they, in different formations, this political area has been active in Greek politics, both in parliament and also in society. So they have their organizational structure, they have their appeal to particular segments of society, and they know how to take the priorities forward. What they do not have is any experience. The vast majority of them did not have any experience with government. So there's a big uncertainty about how they will handle both governing Greece, the country, but also the negotiations with the Eurozone partners.
Well, I ask because the markets were very calm as a result of their result. You wouldn't have expected that. The new finance minister quickly ruled out any exit from the euro, the so-called Grexit, which really would have set the dominoes tumbling across southern Europe. And the decision to form their formal coalition with the so-called independent Greeks, which did not require any programmatic negotiation of any kind, really just the placing of various personnel in ministries, rather than a negotiation with the River or with the KKE, the Communist Party, which would have required a programmatic dialogue and line-by-line agreement.
Yes. It seems paradoxical, but it was actually easier to form a coalition with the independent Greeks, given the circumstances. Both parties have an absolute priority on anti-austerity and against the memorandum that the Greek governments have signed with the Troika. Politically, they come from very different traditions. Obviously, the independent Greeks are a populist, right-wing party, and with very regressive, you would say, views on migration, on national security, on social rights, gay marriages, and so forth. So it is very paradoxical in that sense that Syriza found them as the coalition partner. But for all practical purposes, what really matters for Greece in the next few months, at least, is a common stance on the issue of austerity and the bailout agreement. And on that, they are indeed in full agreement. They would have a much more difficult task in breaking an agreement either with the Communist Party, who are adamant on their position that Greece should exit the European Union, and this was something that Syriza didn't want to negotiate or to entertain as a thought for a policy proposal, or for the River, the Potami, which is a centre-left, basically, party, newly formed party, and for them, maintaining the country inside the Eurozone and committing to an agenda of structural reforms was an absolute red line. So Syriza would then have to negotiate a very difficult negotiation with the River, the Potami, on what kind of structural reforms and which ones would go in the direction of liberalizing markets, which would go in a direction of perhaps increasing efficiency in the economy, but not making the economy more open to markets. So it came very naturally that the coalition was formed between the independent Greeks and Syriza, and I do not expect to have any sort of frictions or disagreements between them until the issue of austerity and the bailout agreement is resolved one way or another.
Let me ask you about the Golden Dawn. This Europe's most successful, explicitly fascist formation. How did they do? How did they outdo expectation? And what role are they likely to play in this new parliamentary scene?
I think at least in the short run, they will play no role in the parliamentary scene. No party wants to have any kind of relation with them, at least at present. There has been rumors or some evidence that the New Democracy, the previous government party, had links, or some members of it had some links with the Golden Dawn members. At the moment, nobody is associating with them in any way. In any case, the leadership of the party is still in custody, awaiting trial. The party is not illegal. The organization behind the party has been deemed as a criminal organization, and there's a trial partly for that. It must be said that the electoral success of Golden Dawn is not an accident, no matter how much we would like to think that it is an accident. There is support for the views of Golden Dawn, maybe not the most extreme of them, But there is definitely an anti-migrant sentiment. So this goes a long way to explain why 6%
It's a bit odd being
of
both patriotic and wearing German swastika-type insignias on their arm.
It's not the only paradox
contradiction.
with them. Yes, absolutely.
Well, Syriza having won the election spectacularly, do you think this will influence or perhaps empower other left-wing, radical, if you will, far-left parties in the rest of Europe?
I think absolutely yes, and you can see how Podemos reacted and engaged with Syriza in Spain, yes, and how they reacted to the Syriza victory. I think we also see signals to that effect even from Italy and France, where we don't have a radical left, but we have a socialist center-left governments in both countries, and they were much more positive in relation to the Syriza victory than other governments in other.
The only social democrat who didn't welcome it was Ed Miliband. I hope for his sake that the new Greek government didn't read his response. I've only got a minute or so, a minute and a half. Let me ask you one thing about PASOK. I was once a great admirer of Papandreou, the father, mainly for his foreign policy stands, the Palestinians and so on. His son then became the prime minister. They were a family of some note. PASOK has now, it would appear, plunged into oblivion. Will they ever come back?
It has. It seems extremely unlikely. I wouldn't think that they will be able to come back. They got 4.7% of the vote, and they are facing big challenges ahead in terms of a further split, perhaps. There is a party conference being scheduled quite soon, but I think they have more things that divide them than things that unite them. There is a part of PASOK, of course, that will be perhaps a backbone of a future formation in the center-left, but I would doubt very much that it would be called PASOK.
Professor, as a tour de horizon, that was a tour de force. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the Sputnik. Coming up after the break, a well-known and controversial form